started. On the entrance table up there, we have surveys, and also on the third floor, so please fill those out at any point today and let us know what you thought about LibCon. And also, Rick's books are available for purchase at the book market booth in the back. Kim, you want to raise your hand? Back there. And you can buy them at any time now, and Rick is going to sign immediately after speaking in the space across the lobby over there. Okay, Rick Yancey is the author of 15 novels and a memoir. His books have been published in over 30 languages and have earned numerous accolades and awards from around the world. His young adult novel, The Extraordinary Adventures of Alfred Croft, was named a Best Book of the Year by Publishers Weekly and was nominated for the Carnegie Medal. In 2010, Rick received a Michael Prince Honor for The Monstrumologist. The sequel, The Curse of the Wendigo, was a finalist for the Los Angeles Times Book Prize. His latest novel, The Fifth Wave, the first in an epic sci-fi trilogy, made its worldwide debut in 2013 and will soon be a major motion picture for GK Films and Sony Pictures. Oh.
Hi.
Hey. Yeah.
Hear me in the back. Welcome to LibCon.
Woo.
Actually, this is the very first LibCon ever. So here we are. Have a read. I'm Rick Yancey. I'm going to put on my dark glasses, and I'll tell you why. I'm just that cool. No, actually what happened was I left my glasses in my car. My car's not here, so I have to do this with dark glasses because it's the only way I'm going to be able to see my speech.
You want my glasses, Rick?
Which I haven't even. Are they reading glasses?
Sort of.
I don't even know the guy. Too many communicable diseases that I know. Seriously, that's very kind of you. But do I look good?
You look great.
These can't work. I'm sorry. But thanks. Anybody else have any glasses I could try on while I'm here? So I'm not trying to be cool. I couldn't be cool even if I tried, but...
Oh, you're right.
Don't forget, if you'd like a book and you'd like me to sign it with your book, you get one of these.
Woo!
You have your choice of black or yellow, depending on your skin tone and your passion preference. They both say the same thing, so it's not like you're getting something. You get to choose.
Black goes with everything.
What? Black goes with everything. Okay, my speech. They asked me to do a keynote address, which I'm not usually used to doing because I had never been at that level where someone would, actually ask me to do a keynote address. And the last keynote address I went to was quite a ways back, a few years back. And I remember how carefully the writer had prepared it. He had, written it all out and was very rehearsed and prepared. And so when I think keynote, I think, well, this is more of a formal sort of thing. It's not just the usual, pace up and down the stage and yell at you for, 40 minutes. So I decided to write it. Now, the last time I actually wrote out a speech was in 2010 for the Prince Awards. And they were very, kind of strict about it. It was like, you have to submit your speech, 2 weeks before the ceremony. Because I guess they have to vet it. They look for language, and if you're saying anything appropriate or anything that's going to embarrass the American Library Association. So I did write the speech out, and I worked very hard on it, and I sent it to them, and they said, oh, this looks great. And then when I got up to give the speech, about halfway through, I just stopped looking at the speech and just went on and on for 30 minutes over my allotted time. Linda Bray was sitting in the front row, and she kept looking at her watch like, this guy didn't even win. I won. He's speaking 15 minutes here. But I decided to write down a few thoughts. Now, half of my speech is planned, and the other half, I was just writing and said, you know what? It's going to just be like the Prince. I'm going to be reading along this speech, I'm going to be following my speech, and I'm just going to forget it, and I'm just going to start talking. So half of it is planned, and half of it's not so planned, but I do have an outline that hopefully I can stick to. But then I think about the poet E.E. Cummings. Have you ever heard of E.E. Cummings?
Yes.
Wonderful poet, if you haven't discovered him yet. And I think it was he who said once, the truth is in the parentheses, which I always thought was a really cool saying. And so maybe the truth more lies in me speaking off the cuff. I don't think so. My wife would definitely say no. But anyway, so I may take off these dark glasses when I get to the part that's not really planned out. Okay. What I'm going to talk about today is writers and writing, and also about readers, because many of us are both. Who's also a writer? See, over half, I would guess. So I'm going to talk a little bit about both, because obviously you can't have one without the other. And I'm going to talk about books, which is one of my very first loves. I cannot remember the first time I ever held a book in my hand. But I can remember with vivid clarity the very first book that probably set me on my road to being a writer, which was a book which I am sure this library has. Make a run for it when I'm done. It's called Are You My Mother? Have you heard of that book? It's not a comedy. I don't know why people are chuckling. It's a very deep, profound story about a little bird who falls out of the nest one day and he can't find his mother. So he proceeds on this journey. He proceeds on this quest to find his mother. Can you think of anything more elemental than that? And he goes to a series of creatures, animate and inanimate objects, and just asks them that question. Are you my mother? Some ignore him. Some say, no, but I'd be happy to eat you, because it goes up to like predators. It even goes up to a backhoe and asks the backhoe, are you my mother? I must have read that book hundreds and hundreds of times. And here's what Are You My Mother teaches us. It teaches us about conflict. It teaches us about the hero's journey. You know, we think about the hero's journey and storytelling. It has rising action. It has a nice little twist at the end. And a very satisfying resolution. Because as you probably can guess, being a children's book, the bird doesn't get eaten or squashed by a car. He finds his mother. I think that book set me off to becoming a voracious reader, and eventually a writer. Because it was in that little tiny picture book that I discovered more about myself than I did about the world of the story. That's what great stories do. That's what great writers give us. We discover through their work the world, but we also discover something about ourselves. Now, I didn't need to read to feel these profound things that I felt when I read Are You My Mother? But it brought me to a place that no other activity than reading could do, which was a way of seeing the world and a way of understanding it, and a way of understanding myself. And I grew up, as children often do, and I became an adolescent. That wasn't a comfortable experience for me. It's not a comfortable experience for a lot of people. But I found in books comfort. Now, in my day, there was no category called young adult, right? We had Old Yeller. We had Huckleberry Finn and Tom Sawyer. We had Treasure Island. We had a great series of mystery books, which I loved, called Encyclopedia Brown, which I believe are still in print. I loved adventures, mysteries, science fiction, fantasy. And my father, who was a faithful enabler of my addiction, kept me up with a steady supply of books. Now my mother, much more practical of the two, decided it was getting a little out of hand. So she put me in the car and drove me to the public library. I walked in that door and I was like, dear God, look at this. My mother was delighted that I was delighted, and I still remember my original library card. It was the, after my Social Security card, it was the very first form of identification I ever had. My mom also discovered that the library was very convenient to her work. She worked downtown, and the library was just, within walking distance, and made an excellent babysitter. I went up there every day after school in the library. And it wasn't long before I read nearly everything of any interest to me in the library. Around 7th grade, I wrote my first story. And I considered my first story in that it had a beginning, a middle, and an end. It had conflict. It had a character facing pretty daunting odds. And I was very nervous. It was for a class. And my English teacher was an ex-Marine. And he treated his class as if we were all recruits on Paris Island. Very tough man. And the assignment was a short story, 5 pages long, typed, double-spaced. And I was very nervous when I turned my story in because my story was 25 pages long, typed and double-spaced. So I handed it in, and I thought I would hedge my bets, and I put a little note on the paper, and I said, I really apologize for the length. That was to save it from becoming a D. Because I thought if I just apologize and recognize and acknowledge that I had gone over the limit, that he would at least pass me. Well, I did get an A. And he wrote on my note, you should never apologize for something that you should be proud of. And I flipped through the paper. Have you ever done this when you got something back from the teacher and you flip through it really fast? Because the grade's just not enough, is it? You got to get that note in there that says how brilliant you are. Right? So his note to me at one part was, I had written a paragraph that was 1 sentence long. You just didn't do that in 7th grade writing, right? Do you guys ever get that lecture? Your paragraphs need to be 3 sentences long at least. You must have a topic sentence. You must have supporting details. And transition. I didn't have any of that. I had just 1 sentence. He said, you should never write a paragraph that's just 1 sentence long. However, Hemingway would disagree with me. And I'm like, I'm the next Ernest. My mom picked me up from school and she said, so how'd you do on your paper? Because she had typed the whole thing, right? She was my mom. She was a legal secretary. She's very quick. I said, I got an A, and he says I'm going to be the next Ernest Hemingway. That's great. See, again, I'm already off the I do remember, though, the experience of waiting for that grade, which seemed to take forever. And it was excruciating. And in the same way, when I get done with a manuscript, but particularly on the eve of publication of a book, I get that same excruciating feeling. Because I'm a writer. I'm not a diarist, right? I'm not a journalist writing for myself. I'm not writing a love poem to the love of my life, although she would like for me to do that more often, probably. I'm a writer, which means I need you. I need readers. And I'll get a little bit more why that's so important in a minute. So it's always painful, it's always excruciating. And I don't think it's so much a reflection of my own tormented self, although I have been at times tormented, but a natural product of being an artist. Now, most in our culture accept the fact that writers are artists, with a few notable exceptions. But readers are artists too. And this is what I mean by that. Books are collaborative art. When we think of the cliche of the writer, right? We think of the guy in his lonely study or garret, or in my experience, my backyard patio with my dog. And it's just you and the computer or the pad of paper or whatever you use to write with. And it's a very solitary thing, right? The solitary artist. Nothing could be further from the truth. Books are a collaborative art. It is a compact or a contract between me and individuals. Not the masses, like other mediums of art, the theater, movies, those kind of things. It's very intimate. We share something intimately, although we may never meet. And I may never know your name. You'll know my name because it's like on the cover in every single dang page you turn. But we remain strangers to each other, except in a very intimate sense. That shared world. We share a vision. The world I create, the worlds I create in my books don't belong just to me. And they don't exist really until they're read by you. It's like music. Music isn't music till it's played. Books aren't books until someone picks one up and reads it. Otherwise, it's just paper with a bunch of black marks on it. Now, we've all had that experience. All of us. You read a book that you really love, and then you find out they're going to make a movie about it. And you're excited, you're a little apprehensive, you're a little worried, because of the experience we've all had in the past. You go see the film and you've read the book and you're like, what? What the heck were they thinking? That's not who that character looks like. Wait a minute, they skipped over that great part where they chase after the train or whatever. Why did they change my beloved story so much till it almost doesn't even resemble it anymore? There's a disconnect that happens in our minds. We say to ourselves, why couldn't they just stay true to the book? Why couldn't they just stay true to it? Now when we think that or we say that, we don't really mean you start filming and you film every single word of dialogue or action that happens in a novel. What we mean when we say that is, you filmmakers are not staying true to the vision that I shared, that I created in collaboration with the author. Think how limited filmmakers are, right? They can only deal with basically two of your senses, and that's sight and hearing. But when you read a book, you are fully engaged. You smell that world. You feel what the characters are feeling. You're inside of the characters, walking around in their skin. A movie doesn't give you that. It can't give you that. That's what's so unique about reading. And what you share with the author. Also, movies are bound by budgets. You should keep that in mind. It's cost some money to do some of these things. When we leave the theater and we sniff to ourselves, oh, the book was so much better. What we're really saying is, my imagination of that book was so much better. Because we're artists as readers. But think about the reverse. When you go see a movie and you haven't read the book yet, right? And the movie is so intriguing, so good that you decide, you know what, I'm going to read the book. And you read the book and it's a totally different experience than if you had read just the book or read the book then saw the movie. Because at that point, the filmmaker's vision is intruding, pushing against your reader's imagination. It's hard for a lot of people who go see a movie first and they read the book, they keep seeing that actor in that character's part. And they're really thrown off when the author throws in some description of the character that is not in sync with how the filmmakers cast it. It kind of throws us off. It's disconcerting because we're mixing up two arts. We're mixing up two mediums of art. It's almost as if when you do that, when you read the book after the movie, the filmmaker is almost like a virus. And infection inside of your imagination that is affecting everything. It's getting in the way of your muse. And I believe in the muses. The muses were a concept created by the ancient Greeks that covered all the arts, right? Poetry, dance. I don't know, how many muses were there? I know there's students out here.
9.
7, 9, 12. Wait a minute. There's a bunch. One of the things that seized my imagination as a young person when I first learned about the muses was this idea that art is eternal, that it stands outside of time. And what's happening with a poet, for example, when he or she is composing their poetry, they're not really composing. The muse is singing or whispering to their soul. And that thing that has existed, that poem, that song, that book, whatever it is, that play, is flowing, the writer is a conduit, and it's flowing through him or her onto the page. Because I haven't felt a muse, right? I don't have visions. Well, not in a long time. But I do have an experience, and any of you who write, you probably have, and if you haven't, you will at some point. You almost feel a spectator to your own art. Have you ever had that experience? First of all, time disappears. Have you ever had this experience? And this doesn't just happen with writing, it happens with a lot of creative endeavors where your inner sense of time gets messed up or out of sync with real time. You think 5 minutes have passed, and you look at the clock or your watch, and an hour and a half has passed. Have you ever had that happen? I think I first felt that as a reader, and then when I first experienced that as a writer, it was exhilarating, joyful, and a little disconcerting, a little unnerving at the time. And I think, writers are famous for having issues. We all know famous stories of writers who have issues with alcohol or other mind-altering drugs, or they have behavioral issues. They like to get into fights. They have, multiple marriages or terrible relationships. And I think part of that reason is that after you've had an experience where you lose your entire sense of self, or you feel more yourself than you've ever felt in your life, more comfortable in your own skin than you have ever felt, it's very difficult to decompress and come back to earth. And I think a lot of writers will do self-numbing techniques to feel better about that, to try to deal with that. My agent, my publisher, my family, everybody knows about Rick Yancey's postpartum depressions. I just finished writing the final book of the 5th Wave trilogy, and the profession, yay! The depression was profound.
Uh-oh.
It's not just, you're leaving characters that you've come to know over the course of 3 books and you're going to miss them. It goes deeper than that. It's like a sense of restlessness, a sense of sadness, and a bit of panic because once again, you're at that point where you don't know what you're supposed to do next. You feel like I should be doing something, but I really can't figure out what that is I should be doing. But I think every time I do sit down to write, even if it's a story about, alien invasions, I'm really chasing that, rainbow, to capture that feeling that we get as readers, and that writers certainly get. I had a humanities professor who told me once, art is the way the soul breathes. And when you think about, when I think about life without books or even a life without writing, it feels like a little like death. Now I'm getting into the more outlined and less planned portion of the speech. Because I was supposed to segue from alien invasion to the books themselves. So that's what I'll do. You know, honestly, I was surprised. I'm always surprised a little bit, but I was very surprised about the reaction to The Fifth Wave when it was published in 2013. And I'll tell you why. I had a long time to think about that book after I wrote it. And when you have that kind of time, you start picking out all the flaws in it, right? You start realizing, oh my gosh, I should have done that. And that happened to me with this book. So when the reaction started building about it after its publication, I was a little like, felt like the Emperor in the Emperor's New Clothes story. Like, at some point, somebody's going to figure out, this is not that good. But actually, I don't self-flagellate a lot. But the nice thing about writing trilogies is that whatever flaws you pick up in like the first book, you've got like 2 books to fix that. And if you think, like writers like, I'm not going to drop any names, but Jonathan Franzen. You think that man doesn't watch social media? He's like, oh, social media is ruining our lives. I don't tweet. I don't Facebook. Nonsense. I can't think of a better way, talking about this collaboration between writers and readers, to break that wall, Okay, in the past, before the internet, if a writer did something that really ticked you off, what was your alternative? All you could do was throw the book across the room. I guess you could pick up, write a letter. So you dirty scum. Such a hack. Now the internet has freed us to practically tell the writer that in real time. So if you're worried if you're on Twitter or Facebook and you're worried, I wrote, not me personally, I'm doing a quote here. That Veronica Roth, I wrote her a really nasty tweet, but I know she never reads that. You bet she does read that. You feel happy. Veronica Roth's gonna know how ticked off you are. Might even ruin her morning coffee. The great thing about the social media was, as a writer, it's like, okay, one of my heroes is, I can take these off now. One of my heroes is Abraham Lincoln. And he used to take what he called public opinion baths. This was obviously before the internet. He would actually lay on a divan in the executive office, and just people would line up from the street and go in the White House and just tell Lincoln, what a piece of crap he was, and how he was, blowing the war and doing all these awful things, and he would just lay there and listen to him. Spent hours doing it. Not that I spent hours on the internet, like Googling myself. But one of the discoveries I made through social media was hearing from you guys. Because that's not something a writer really does unless they do a lot of traveling, do a lot of book signings, actually talk one-on-one with the fans. Do I diligently answer everything that's written to me? I don't. But I usually see most things. So I had a lot of time to think about The Fifth Wave in the next 2 books. But I was hampered in the sense that I had about 150 pages done of the novel. And my agent called me and said, Sony Pictures wants to buy the rights to this book. I said, what book? It's not even written yet. And they said, they don't care.